Welcome to the Exhibit A podcast.
We're on, and we have the party goddess with us, Marley Majcher. How are you, Marley?
I am great. How are you, Don?
Good, good. So for many of our guests, I decided to introduce a very interesting topic based upon a recent article that I read. And that was an article where a bunch of ladies had a party, a divorce party. They all got together in their, their wedding clothes, and they threw a big bash celebrating their divorce. And as I was looking at the article and chuckling, my wife turned to me and said, you know, Marley Majcher is the party goddess, and she's done these before. Why don't you have her on the podcast? So, Marley, that's where we thought of you. And sure enough, I did some research on you, and you've got an incredible background.
A lot of stripes there, Don, you know, both in terms of how we met originally and also in terms of my career. So yes, you're right.
So let's talk about your background a little bit. This was really interesting. As long as I've known you, I didn't know any of this really. I mean, so CEO of the Party Goddess, a nationally acquainted full-service catering and event planning company that originates all aspects of large-scale functions for A-list celebrities, social and corporate alike. And this is, my wife went to the internet and showed me pictures of you with a bunch of celebrities throwing parties and stuff. And I thought, I had no idea. Holy cow. I knew that you were, self-employed, and I see you on social media, in various things that you're doing, but.
You just thought I was a poser? Is that it? You thought it was awesome. That's good to know.
You're also the author of a book entitled, But Are You Making Any Money? And I thought that I've got to read that book. I just realized that today when I looked at that, but that is fascinating for all people that are self-employed, because that's the hidden secret is there's a lot of people that are self-employed that aren't making any money.
Well, and the thing is that it's the hidden secret, and it's literally like the dirty little secret. And I'm kind of all about not having secrets, because first of all, they will just only come out, and they're only going to come out at the most inopportune time. So one of the reason that I wrote the book in the first place was because people say party planning and writing a business book, what's the connection? And I went to Georgetown on this really amazing education. But, at the time now I know, but at the time I had very bad ADHD that was undiagnosed. And so I barely, so many classes, I barely made it through my classes. And then, then fast forward, you can imagine running your own business. I wanted to get into something creative, and like so many entrepreneurs, you get into something because you love it, right? You don't get into it because, oh, okay, you're like, I'm going to leave corporate America and do this because I love to, whatever it is, bake cupcakes. Well, that's what I love to do as far as the event planning went. But then what you find out is you get into this, and I don't care what your IQ is, you get into being an entrepreneur and you realize, wait a minute, this isn't so much about baking cupcakes. And sometimes you probably even feel like it isn't about practicing law. It's about, do we have more toner for the printer? And how do I exchange and wait a second, how do I log in for the Zoom call? Because now I guess, we're doing that. And it becomes about all these other things. And so this book really talks about time. At the end of the day, it's an expanded version of cost of goods sold, which is a classic business piece, but it really talks about how you spend your time. And at the end of the day, it does come back to parties, because it's my goal is to find out from my clients, what do they value the most, right? And sometimes they value, obviously there might be people just watching this who want tips on party planning. That's awesome. And there might be somebody who says, oh, hey, listen, I want to hire her to do this. Well, the people that hire us are the ones who value time the most for whatever reason. Maybe they have a bunch of kids. Maybe they have a challenging career. Maybe they travel a lot, and they say, listen, I don't want to deal with this. You go figure out who the best bands are and when they're available and what the deposit is. And I don't want to be bothered with their contract and all that other stuff. And so they just come to us. Or for the divorce party, in that case, let's say, if they're too, sometimes you're too emotionally tied to it. And you're just like, oh my gosh, I want to celebrate. I'm so happy. I'm done. This is my new chapter, but I'm stuck. And so that's where then I come in and go, okay, no worries. And then I kind of, because I liken it to, you can't read the label from inside the jar, right? So it's very easy for me to pull out all those things about what you want at your own party. But if you sat down by yourself and tried to make a list, it's like giving your arm a massage. It's like a Dom. It doesn't feel very good.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. Yeah, you say that because, right now with the stay-at-home orders, there's a lot of people that are choosing to have a lot of backyard fun, inviting people over. And, I've gotten into that swing. And sometimes I think, I've made this like a nice vacation. I've got my little grass hut, umbrella.
Man cave kind of.
Is that bartender, and I need, I need somebody to bring some food and make this really enjoyable because I'm cooking all this stuff, and it's less fun because of that.
Yeah, and people forget that. They forget that they think of kind of like, oh, okay, the party day, it's great to have a party, but they forget all the part leading up to getting in the shower and just getting ready for the party, right? They forget there's an ice delivery and a rental delivery and a this and a that, and like, oh my gosh, we have to sweep the backyard, and wait a second, I never noticed that the tree dropped so many leaves on the table. I thought I just cleaned that, like all that dumb stuff.
Awesome. So yeah, you've already mentioned this, but you're a graduate of Georgetown University, the McDonough School of Business, and you're also a regular guest lecturer there. That's pretty impressive that they've been inviting you back to be a lecturer. How long have you been doing that?
A very long time. And it's, as long as I can remember, probably at least 10 years. But the thing that's so funny to me about it is you can imagine like one of the professors that has me back, he is head of the entrepreneurship school. I think I'm going to get his title wrong. And my dad is always like, Marley, what are they going to have you talk about? And nobody ever understands. Like, they're like, what are you, probably kind of like you, like they don't realize I actually have like a background in a career that's not like ding, ding, ding. And this one professor said that he always tries to have me at the end of the year at a class right after lunch. And I was like, oh. And he said, because I know you're going to wake them up. So he said, they'll have a sleep after lunch. And at the end of the year, they don't care anyway. And he's like, you're always voted the favorite lecture, which I find hilarious because I literally go in there and he's like, I just hit the on switch and let you go. But the point is that my perspective there, instead of, obviously if you look at Georgetown graduates, it's insane what these people have done in their careers. I'm like, why would you want me? But one of the reasons they want is they want a woman who's built a business from scratch to over $1 million or more, because now half the business school is women. And then he's like, you just tell it like it is, because I've done amazing events, right? But I don't sit here running around the majority of my day, like chatting with Gwyneth Paltrow. That is not, those are like the highlights, the clip. And so that's kind of the point, is that I just like get down to the bottom line with them and tell them, hey, listen, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you have a plan to have a spouse, you better make sure they have a steady income, because it's all this roller coaster stuff. And I just kind of don't sugarcoat it, because the last thing you want to do is get in business or do anything and not love it. And the one thing I do love is like, I love what I do. Like you can add, like, we'll go into all these questions about divorce parties. I could be like, and then you could do this, Dawn, and then you could do this, and then you can do this. And we could be here for 4 hours and you'd be like, okay, yes, thank you. And you have a great day. We didn't need an encyclopedia, but.
Well, that leads me to my next question is how in the world did you get into this profession? You're at Georgetown studying, a business type of, degree, or pursuing a degree like that. And then suddenly you start your own company and you choose to do party planning. So
yeah. All right. Well, this is just really great. Very appropriate. Speaking with my divorce lawyer on a topic about divorce parties. So let's just go right there. So I went to Georgetown the summer before my junior year. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was bored. I like to keep busy and do stuff. Nothing really resonated. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to France. And I was like, I'm going to get a language tutor, because I had taken French in high school, but I was like, I'm going to get a language tutor and I'm going to go to cooking school for the summer. So I went to Paris and lived there for the whole summer. And then I came back and started school. And in those days, with the horse and buggy, you also got your film developed. And so I was heading down to get my film developed, and I ran into my professor, and it was one of my public speaking, or one of the business kind of public speaking things you had to do for the class. And the topic was what you knew more about than anybody else. And the idea was that you could use the topic so that you'd feel comfortable with the material, so that you could focus on hitting the marks that she wanted to in terms of the structure and, your presentation and all those things. So of course, I'm like in tears because there's nothing I know more about than anybody else at Georgetown. And my mom was like, well, you just came back from cooking school. There's no way they could know more than that. So when I was headed down to pick up my photos or drop them off, I ran into my professor and I was like, oh, hey, I'm super excited. And I'm doing my topic on, French cooking. And she's like, oh, that's great. And I said, yes. And I'm interviewing the chef from 1789. Well, 1789 is this very fancy restaurant in Georgetown. And I had maybe passed it that day, but it certainly was not on my mind. I did not have an interview with the chef from 1789, but I'm also like so afraid of like God and karma that I was like, she's like, oh my God, that's my favorite restaurant. She's going on and on. And I was like, okay. So I go home in tears and I say to my roommates, I just told my professor, and me, I'm thinking I'm going to get kicked out of Georgetown. This is the end of my life. So they said, don't worry. They have this new chef. He just is from New York. He'll be too like nervous to say no. You won't have known the ropes because chefs are notoriously egotistical. And so they said, we'll set up the interview. And so I was like, okay, great. So I go to meet him to do this interview and I take one look at him and I decide I need to marry him. And so, but how was I going to marry him? Because I was only 19 and he was 20 years older than I was. And by the way, I never had a boyfriend. So that's also another stretch. So I decided I need to marry him, but the restaurant is in like so many of those places, like in New York or DC, it's like in the basement, basically. And so I'm never going to see this guy. So I had to think very quickly. And I thought, okay, they have soufflés on the menu. I had done my homework. And soufflés are notoriously difficult to make, like especially on a menu like that for a restaurant, because you don't know when they're going to come in, and it's timing. And I noticed he was American and he didn't speak Spanish, and I did speak Spanish. So I was like, okay, here's my new persona. I am now the hardest working Spanish speaking, translating souffle expert. So then I basically weave in all these things into my interview. And then I said, oh, can I come back? And he thought it was full of garbage. And I said, listen, I'd really love just to shadow you. So he's like, fine. So of course I went in like full hair of makeup, and then I worked, and the bottom line was, and I just never left there. So I started working. I get out of school at 2:30 and I go 3:30 to 11:30, 3 days a week. And remember, don't forget about the ADHD. And so my parents were like, Marley, you are barely getting through school anyway. And I was like, they said, first of all, they didn't want me to work. Second of all, they didn't exactly know what I was up to at this point, but they didn't like it. And they said, if your grades go down, you're out. Well, of course, it was the only time I made the dean's list, but he never asked me out. So I was like, fine. So I went to cooking school senior year before senior year to Normandy, plotted the whole time how I was going to quit. Because, I'm like this great employee for a year. And then I come back and I quit, and he asked me out. And then we were engaged a month after graduation. So how about that for goal setting? Now, the problem is that if you marry a chef, you're never going to see them. And so what did we do? We came back to California and opened a restaurant. So we opened a restaurant, and this gets into a whole other crazy story, but my mom, we believe in like having real estate. So my mom, we were looking for a property. We couldn't find it. In Pasadena, there's this amazing restaurant called Monahan's. I knew the girl growing up, her uncle owned Monahan's. So my parents were at church, because remember, I'm still in DC. So my parents were at church and they were saying, like what your kids are up to. And of course, my mom was like, about to crash into a wall, but whatever. So she said how we were looking, and then they cut a deal on the church steps to buy Monahan's. And then I was like, okay, yay. And so then we bought Monahan's and then redid it, and then came back and started the restaurant. And then from there, I started the catering company with my chef husband. But this, then what do you do? I was like, okay, I know how to like read my financial statements, and I know how to cook and all this stuff. And I ran the back, I ran like the front of the house. He ran the back. But what I realized is I was so focused on my sales numbers and being this like 21-year-old superstar that, I did $1 million my first year, but I was like spending 1.1. So what do you do like when you're under financial pressure and you're, two people working in the same restaurant 24 hours a day? So I was like, next natural move is like you get pregnant. So I did. And now I'm pregnant and my marriage is on the rocks and. Net, I have a bad skiing accident. We were constantly being approached to partner up. And so I had introduced my parents to the Smith brothers ages ago. That's the people who we then ended up partnering with, which thank God it was the best deal we've ever done in our lives. And I didn't want to do it, but now with this bad skiing accident and getting divorced and my dad is like, Marley, you love the parties. That's the component in all this that you want to do. This will free you up to do that. And you don't have to worry about the restaurant. I was like, because I didn't want to look like I failed. So anyway, speaking of somebody who knows like how to throw a party, I mean, I would talk about you're down when you are going through a divorce. And if anybody needed a party, I did. But so I just started from that. And I was at such a low point that people are like, where did you come up with that name? And I was at such a low point that I was like, forget it, man. At this point, like here, I'm getting divorced publicly. I mean, there's so many things going on I can't even explain. And I was like, I'm going to call myself the party goddess. And I remember the first time somebody at an industry event introduced me, and they had way more confidence in me than I did as the party goddess. And I was like, and I just could see this like planner or whatever, like, because LA and New York are very competitive markets, very snooty. And they were like, ugh. And at that point, that like lit the fire. And I was like, man, I will bury you one day. And sure enough, I did. And then that's literally what drove me to go get celebrity clients and all that stuff, because I knew if I got celebrity clients, then I'd also be hired by regular people at money, because I knew people followed what celebrities did. So to me, it was very simple. It's like, oh, we'll just get celebrities, and that will be my differential advantage. And sure enough, it is. I mean, it's crazy to me because I was a great party planner before I had a celebrity. But then when I made that choice, it was actually really great, because when you work for people like that who have very high expectations, who have no time to plan anything, they know sometimes exactly what they want and sometimes they have no idea. You get really, really good at what you do, because they talk about people who will eat you for lunch.
Oh my God.
You will be eaten, discarded, put on the freeway, backed up, rolled over, because there's a million of me. You know, everybody wants their attention and to have them as clients. So I got really, really, really good at what I did, thanks to very demanding people, you know? So, and then that made me really good at podcasts like this. Because they were always like, well, like, what's the next idea? Like, tell me something that nobody's doing. Like, tell me. And so I'd always be like, and then you just finally get really good at it. Like, I do not want to be sitting in Britney Spears' living room going, oh, let me get back to you. Oh, I'm going to Google it. I mean, you don't have choice. You're like, okay, we could do, you know, so.
You know, the best part of that story, for me, is your father recognizing what you were meant to do. You know, he saw the joy that you had in that, and he's like, channel it here. You know, it's something that you didn't think of, but you know, somebody guided you, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, no, really great.
Okay, so with regard to your favorite places to have parties, when you're whether it's the celebrities or somebody else.
Easy, warehouse.
Yeah, where'd you like to go?
Warehouses.
The warehouse? Oh, a warehouse.
A warehouse. Here's why. One of my secret sauces with events is I love the shock and awe. And you have, and I did this, I've done this many times, but you have people pull up to a very grungy warehouse in downtown LA that they're pretty sure there is a knifing, if not going on currently, was not very long ago. And you have them be like, what are we doing? And then they walk in and they're like, holy cow. So I love spaces that are not supposed to be for parties. And I love spaces that you can go in and transform, and buildings that have character. So you're not just like, okay, let's have the perfect porta potty. Okay, let's have it's like, forget that. Like, what do we have here that we can like make magic with? Because to me, I don't like, I mean, you know, you do what you have to do, but I don't like the idea of something being a factory kind of place to have a party, because it loses its character. Like, it loses the personality of the people or the couple or and so second to a warehouse is, or, you know, obviously is like a gallery or something where it's just basically a blank space. But then my next favorite is always like people's houses or their backyards, and which is hilarious that I'm saying that because my mom used to always say that, and I was like, it's so dumb. Like, who wants to do something in their backyard? But really, it you can do very cool things and incorporate like your personality and the things that are important to you that like a good party planner, you know, can bring out.
Oh, cool. So you, once upon a time, you threw a divorce party, right?
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah.
How did you come up with the idea? A divorce party, of all things.
Well, because to me, remember, it all kind of ties back. I have what appears to be a very glamorous life on the outside. And let's face it, I do in many, I mean, well, in a lot of, almost always, I have a very glamorous life, but that doesn't change the fact that to get to this very glamorous life, I mean, it has not been exactly like, ooh, it's been, you know. So because of that, you learn to embrace failure, right? And so if I was going to hide under a rock or hide every time I had a failure, I mean, let's face it, I'd still be there. So to me, it was like, I also like to expose things that I know everybody's talking about. To me, it's kind of like the ultimate, like, you know, bite me. So to me, it's like, yeah, I know you're talking about me, whatever. I'm going to now really give you something to talk about. So because I find it takes the wind out of everybody's sails. You know what I mean? Like what's the first thing that a celebrity does when there's something, if they're smart, they get in front of the story. So if there's something about to leak, what do? They leak it because then the photos that the Inquirer has are worthless, all that stuff. So what I decided is I'd be like my own leaker / celebrator. And I was like, if I can just encourage people that like, okay, you got divorced. Okay, you got divorced. I mean, like I'm Catholic, still am Catholic, like I've been divorced. Like it was, nobody in my family got divorced. It was a tragedy, blah, the whole thing. But sometimes you just have to say, you know, I made a mistake, but I don't want to die because of it. So isn't there some good? And at the end of the day, I'm an optimist. So I was like, isn't there some good? So I would really encourage clients to do it. And I was like, we can't only wait for the amazing job, or we can't only wait to like have a wedding. You have to be able to celebrate things that maybe aren't what you think you should celebrate. But when do you need your friends more than when you're going through divorce, right?
Right.
I mean, you know this better than anybody. You need that support system who's like, you've got this and it's going to be okay. Because, you know, if you're, I don't know, maybe you've encountered this, but like most people that I know who are getting divorced, they're not usually in the best shape of their lives. They're not usually looking the hottest. They're not usually, it's like, it's, you know, it's a gradual point getting to that point. And so to me, it's like, if you can kind of look at it as, hey, listen, let's have this be the next phase. Like, what do you want to do now? Do you want to get in shape? Do you want to, you know, be that, like, what do you want to change about your life? So to me, it kind of is a way to close the door on the old and open the door to the new. And that's how I like to approach divorce parties. You can, of course, approach them a million different ways. And you can certainly approach them from like, bash the guy or bash the, you know, chick all day long. And, you know, Lord knows, you know, I've got a couple mortgages to pay. And if that's what the client wants, I'm going to bash away. But I do think there's a real component to focusing on the good component, that obviously the joke components, like, you know, there's so many great sayings and stuff that you can, but without bashing that person specifically. But then you can get right down to, if you want to bash the person specifically, you know, you have the little like voodoo dolls made and, you know, you're doing that at the party and it's like, ding, 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 you know, with the pins. And
so who do you put on the guest list?
Who do you put on the guest list? Well, to me, depends on what you're after. If you are like, to me, you know, I might be inclined to put some snarky, uppity, whatever people. So I could be like, haha, why don't you come see how fabulous my new life is? And since you're going to be talking about it, I'm just going to give you all the material right now. But for most people who aren't vengeful, they should invite the people they feel the best about. Like literally do a gut check. Because to me, a divorce party, and, you know, other than my snarky comment about being vengeful, if you're going to do a divorce party, really say to yourself, when you go, like make your list and then say to yourself, do I feel good around that person? Not do you like one time did you have a bad day, but do you like, are you in general, you don't feel so hot. Do you want them around? And if they're the ones that you're like, yeah, I would like them to bring me chicken soup, that would be good, or they're always kind, or they're understanding, then do it. If it's like, well, it's my ex-sister-in-law and I kind of feel like I have to, hell no. This is like, with divorce parties, this is not a moment of feel like you have to. This is a moment where you're like, oh yeah, I did all those have tos every Thanksgiving in Minnesota. No.
Yeah, I was thinking that there's some people you don't want to invite, like your ex-spouse, unless it's extremely amicable, I guess.
Yeah, but then it's kind of like, even if it's extremely amicable, and I've had the extremely amicable, it's still just, you don't want to, you don't need to rub it in somebody's face. I mean, maybe you could, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that would maybe be better if somebody were gay, like if somebody turned gay, right? Because then it's like if I were married to somebody, which I have not been, who turned gay, then I'd be excited, because then I'd be like, this is awesome for both of us. Like, he's now super creative and can help me go shopping, and everybody's happy, right? And I'm not going to be jealous that he's now dating a guy. Whereas anybody I was with ever that is now dating anybody, I'd be like, oh, it just would be devastating.
Yeah, I think that there's got to be some warnings that you would give out, or some pitfalls that you would think, the do nots for one of these.
Well, also, I'll give you another couple. Do not invite people who have a tendency to drink and fall down or run their mouths in inappropriate situations, because this is prime time for that to happen. It will guarantee. So whatever you do, yeah, don't invite those people unless they have a handler. And I have addressed that with parties before specifically too.
Okay. Well, what are some of the activities that, what would it look like? I mean, we know what a wedding looks like. You got all the bridesmaids and the typical dance and all that other stuff. What would a divorce party look like?
Well, it can look, obviously, a million different ways. First, I always say to people, like, what's your goal? And, sometimes the goal, let's face it, is, and it's not my place to judge, is kind of like a little bit of the social media revenge thing, where you want to be looking fab. And that's why I say, what's the goal? Because you want to be looking, if it's one of those things where people are going to post stuff on Facebook, and you want the other person to, maybe you're not going to serve it on a silver platter, but if they see it, you want to look good and you're having fun and you're moving on with your new life. Well, that's one goal. Some people are like, could care less. In fact, some people are like, I don't want them to see anything. Or sometimes you're like, you know what? I just want to have it be like a cocoon. So it can be like girls' night in, and have it be a whole spa thing where you have 5 of your best girlfriends that supported you through the whole thing. And you have somebody come in and do, mani, pedi, and Botox. And I mean, you can go till the cows come home and have, massages and all that stuff, and have it really be like a sanctuary. Or of course it can be the opposite, and it can be the full rager, and, with your girlfriends and everybody looking fabulous. You can also do it which I have done before, where people can come, but they must bring like a single guy. That was at a theme when I was saying at this point I was going to turn into Elizabeth Taylor if I kept getting married. And so the idea was like, but let's just see the options. So please bring any single gentleman you might have. And that worked very well. So you can do that. Another thing is you can get into all the kitsch, fun, ridiculous stuff, which is like the piñata that looks like the guy, you know what I mean? And you fill it, and then you can have the voodoo doll party favors. You can have, the cake that is, I mean, it kind of like can start marrying bachelorette party stuff. So it just kind of depends. Do you want the full debauchery? Do you want to be like soothed and feel better and surrounded by your best friends? Or do you want to just like, let it rip, but not necessarily cheesy town? Because then depending on who you're going to have and how big, etc. I mean, there's a ton of fun you can have. I mean, you can have, wear your old wedding dress. You can wear the worst bridesmaid's dress you ever had to wear. You can go to the Goodwill and find a bridesmaid's dress that you're so glad you didn't have to wear. Like, there are a million extrapolations of this, but the idea is just to to me at least, is to plan it and then kind of let it go. Like, you want to have structure to an event, right? Like, people so many times always say, I say, people's attention span for a party is, usually it's like 4 hours. I mean, I don't really care how great the band is. I mean, maybe if you're in college, maybe if you're in Coachella, it might be slightly different, but that's kind of the thing. You're not likely going to get people for a 6-7 hour party, right? So you kind of have that amount of time to work with. And when you look at the framework of a divorce party, it's not that much different from a framework of any other party in terms of, you set this kind of 4 hour window. If you're going to set it during a meal time, if it's like right in the middle of dinner, well, I'm sorry, you are going to have to serve food that is heavy enough for dinner, whether you like it or not, because then people are it's going to be weird. If you want it, if you're like, oh, I don't want to spend that much money, totally fine, then do it like on the later side as a dessert-ish kind of party, which you can work all that in, or as heavy hors d'oeuvres, or as a brunch. I mean, the divorce party thing too works really great for, brunch and mimosas and like kind of daytime good debauchery. But so it just kind of, it just goes back to what's the feeling you want, but you still do need to have a structure, and, don't count on yourself to be the photographer, right? Have somebody else, like, hire a photographer, or if you don't want to go that far, have a couple people really who know this is their role to get the fun shots. But then you definitely, with divorce party, you absolutely want to set the social media rules ahead of time, because I cannot tell you, I have done more articles and international news segments on this whole component of social media and the social media etiquette and everything with parties. And people assume, they are like, oh, well, they knew I was a private person and that I wouldn't want that out there. Oh, no.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow.
If you do not want your friends posting stuff, you better be very clear who to post, who to tag, who to not post, because this is exactly the kind of party. Some people feel like, thank God in my line of work, I could really be at any kind of party, and it wouldn't make too much difference, right? They're not going to be like, oh, I'm not going to hire her as that party planner. But you're in certain fields where it would absolutely look very inappropriate if you are in your old wedding dress knocking back Sex on the Beach shots. I mean, let's face it. So, and then now we have the video component, and it goes to TikTok. I mean, all like, oh. So I want to really stress that, because everybody is not on the same page with that at all. Not even family members are on the same page. Some people are like, oh my God, they never cared. Now all of a sudden, well, because you knew I looked fat. You knew he would see it. And you're like, you didn't look fat. Didn't know you guys were still friends on, so don't assume anything.
Okay. Well, Marley, I think we're running out of time. That was not only very informative, but as always, you were extremely entertaining. I think really your second calling is to be a comedian. I don't know if you do stand-up or not, but
I do not do stand-up, but Dawn, I will let you and your viewers know, should I decide to take that on.
How can people reach you if they want to hire the Party Goddess Incorporated?
The easiest thing is to go to thepartygoddess.com, or to find us on Twitter, which is @thepartygoddess, 2 D's, 2 S's, and same thing with Instagram @thepartygoddess, and those are all great ways to find us. And of course, if you're an entrepreneur and want to buy the book, go to Amazon and buy it. But are you making any money?
Absolutely. I'm getting that book right away. Very interesting. Well, Marley, thank you very much.
Thank
you.
It
was really fun and informative. And thank you for joining Exhibit A. We'll see you next time.
For more information, visit us at PasadenaLawOffice.com.